Liberals have continually chosen to protect the billionaire pharmaceutical industry instead of families.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Cypher and I sometimes have to pinch ourselves when our theories about political events are actually true, with this one being strangely accurate so far.
For those of you that watch our live streams, and all of you should, we were posed a question on a live stream that we held on Sunday, September 3rd, so about a month ago. The question was whether we still thought a spring election was coming. Before we get into tonight's story, we wanted you to hear what we said, because when you hear the facts that we're about to present, it's going to blow your mind.
My early theory was that because the pharma plan is from Jagmeet, my early theory was when Jagmeet put it forward that there was no way they were going to introduce a pharma plan because A, it's too expensive. And that once that was voted down, Jagmeet was going to use that as an excuse to kind of call an election to signal to his voters, see, I tried to do this, and the Liberals aren't being cooperative, and he'll use that as a narrative to try and line that up. So he has a different narrative than the riding boundaries. That was my initial theory of what's going to happen. I still think that's probably how it's going to go out. Now, that's if Jagmeet's going to be playing ball with the rest of the party. If he says, nope, I'm going to ride this out because I want my pension and that's all there is to it. I don't care what happens to Canada. If there are still some patriots left in the NDP, and if there are enough of them. Now, we did some math. I believe there needs to be 18 of them, which is a significant amount. 18 or 19 of the NDP out of the current 25 would have to break in order to have a successful non-confidence vote, and that would be voting down the government by one seat.
So, before we get any further in the video, for those of you that are new to our channel, we apologize for the old format. Coming back to the new format, it looks so much better, so we are glad we made the change, but you know, we live and learn and take feedback from our viewers so we can improve the show. So thank you all for that.
And we do know that some of you like the old puppets, so you may still see them from time to time in clips like this.
So you get a bit of nostalgia, so there you go. Now, so that's what we predicted back in September 3rd, 2023. So let's get into an article posted today by the National Post.
Planned resolution at NDP convention would make deal with Liberals conditional on Pharmacare legislation. The supply and confidence deal with the Liberals had the NDP supporting the minority Liberals on key votes in exchange for progress on shared priorities.
So, what does that mean? Well, what it essentially means is the supply and confidence agreement that you've heard over and over and over again between the NDP party and the Liberals. If this resolution passed at the NDP convention, it would make that agreement null and void if the Liberals did not pass a universal Pharmacare resolution. Think about back to the prediction in that Jagmeet would make the Pharmacare bill the reason to pull down the government. Okay, so now we have the beginning of that possible genesis. Now, many of you have heard about the supply and confidence agreement ad nauseum. You've probably never seen it. Well, as we usually do, we did some digging and we decided to find it for you. So here's the supply and confidence agreement that has bound these two terrible parties together. So if you're interested in looking at this in more detail, you can find this link in the description of the video, but it's on the government website. And it's called Delivering for Canadians Now. And this is just a whole bunch of preamble at the beginning virtue signaling, saying we're trying to make everyone's lives better. Well, under here, this basically says that the NDP party will agree not to vote against the Liberal Party when it comes to budgets, when it comes to confidence votes and supply votes. So it also says they're going to hold meetings, this is when, and this is why this is basically a coalition government, as much as Jagmeet wants to pretend it's not. Now, there's some conditions in here. Now, these are not conditions that could break the supply and confidence agreement. What it is a bunch of agreed priorities. So what this says is that, for example, the dental program, it would start with making that a priority for under 12-year-olds in 2022, and then expand to under 18-year-olds. Now, this doesn't specifically say that the supply and confidence agreement would be broken if that didn't happen. It just says that it's going to be made a priority. So what we're talking about here is the second point under a better healthcare system, which is continuing progress towards a universal national pharmacare program by passing a Canada Pharmacare Act by the end of 2023, and then tasking the National Drug Agency to develop a national formulary of essential medicines and bulk purchasing plan by the end of the agreement. So that's your supply and confidence agreement. Let's get back to the article.
Quote, our NDP convention resolution would make it clear that if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau breaks his promise for universal, comprehensive, and public pharmacare, it will have consequences, end quote, the website states. The resolution comes after NDP health critic Don Davies revealed that the party rejected the Liberal government's first draft of a pharmacare bill that is expected to be tabled this fall. Quote, it doesn't meet the New Democrats' red line at this point, end quote, Davies said in an interview this week. Quote, we're waiting for a next draft to come to us, end quote. Davies said the NDP will accept nothing less than a commitment to pharmacare paid for and administered through the public single-payer system. The group, led by James Brunette, the president of the Ottawa South Provincial NDP, said members must loudly tell the party they support them in the fight for pharmacare, quote, even if that means risking an election, end quote.
So Jagmeet elaborated on the dissatisfaction of the bill in a press conference today where he was asked about it. So let's see what he had to say.
To strengthen accountability that would allow for consumers to be protected and to bring down prices that way.
And if I could ask you just on a different topic, your party has, I guess, rejected the first draft of legislation on pharmacare that's been put forward by the Liberals. So where are the discrepancies between what you're looking for on pharmacare and what the government is offering at this point?
Certainly. So the main summary, if I could summarize the difference between the Liberal government and Justin Trudeau's approach and the New Democrat approach and my approach as leader, is the Liberals have continually chosen to protect the billionaire pharmaceutical industry instead of families. And that's what they're doing again in their proposal in the first draft. Just to remind folks, the board that sets medication prices in Canada had a series of significant resignations because they were protesting the fact that this Liberal government and the finance minister at the time, effectively this Liberal prime minister, were siding with the pharmaceutical industry and hampering their ability to bring down prices for medication. They resigned to send a clear message that this is wrong. And that is, again, what's happening with their proposal. This is a bill that is more interested in protecting the interests of pharmaceutical companies than protecting people in our country that need to buy medication. So what we're looking for is a foundational law that will set that foundation for universal public pharmacare, which would mean for a family that has to worry about the cost of medication, has to worry about on top of food prices and rent, they have to worry about paying for the medication, they wouldn't have to worry about that. It would alleviate that pressure. They would not have to feel that weight of saying, how am I going to afford this? How am I going to be able to afford the medication I need to stay healthy? They wouldn't have to worry about that.
As much as I hate to agree with the guy, Jagmeet isn't wrong. There were resignations at the P and PRB. That stands for the Patented Medicine Prices Review Board. I had mentioned it in a previous episode where I had said that there's kind of like a body that oversees the price of medications in Canada. That's what this is. So there was two gentlemen I see in this article that had resigned, a gentleman named Matthew Herder and another one named Douglas Clark. Both were executives. And Herder resigned because he criticized the government's failure to curb excessive drug prices or ensure that the pharmaceutical industry meets its research and development commitments. So how this review board works is they look at 7 different countries and compare the price of patented drugs in those countries and take the median value, and that's what they recommend that Canada be charged for those same drugs. They also look at what the market value of that medication is compared to other similar medications that are currently in the Canadian market. Herder was particularly upset, if you want to say that, with the government because the government was supposed to reinvest 10% of Canadian sales into research and development in exchange for stronger patent protections. But the government was not following through on its own reforms in order to lower drug prices. This is a direct quote from the article. In 2017, the Liberal government pitched that it would save nearly $13 billion in drug spending over 10 years, namely by changing the list of countries used to determine if Canada's prices were too high, and by allowing the PMPRB to consider in their calculations the confidential rebates companies give to some jurisdictions, as well as the market value of a given drug. So the Liberal government is not following through on these promises that it made, and that's why these folks are resigning.
Now, we get back to the whole issue at hand, which is the supply and confidence agreement and the fact that, just so everybody knows, it is not in the budget for this year, just so everybody understands that. And the fact that if they actually agreed to all of the NDP demands on this, all hell would break loose, because the NDP wants a universal single-payer healthcare system, meaning it's basically like your provincial healthcare. You go to your doctor, you don't do anything, and you leave. So you would walk into your local pharmacy, you would get your medication, you wouldn't pay for anything, you would just ask for it, the pharmacist would hand it over to you, and then you'd leave. And then what the pharmacy would do is then file a reimbursement claim to the government, and then they would get that the cost of the medication back. That's what would happen. Now, if that did happen, there would be upheaval in the insurance industry and in the benefits industry. Because remember, millions of people in Canada are paying into insurance benefit plans, either private or through their organizations, that cover medication of all types. So if the government just swooped in and said, nope, there's a federal national healthcare or Pharmacare program, then there's no reason to pay all of these insurance companies that money. And there's no reason to pay all of these pharmaceutical companies all of this money, because you better believe that the government's not going to be paying as high of a price as all of these pharmacies. So now the pharmaceutical companies are going to be up in arms because their profit margins are going to be going down. So what would happen is the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies would band together, and then Ottawa is not going to have a good time. And this would be a fight that would go on for a heck of a long time. It's certainly not going to happen within 2 months. You really expect a fully fleshed out Pharmacare framework and plan to be tabled, voted on, and passed by December 31st of 2023. Never mind the fact that there's going to be a break in Parliament during that time. It's not going to happen.
Well, and further to that, who knows what this is going to do to the supply chain? if the government is the only provider, then who's to say they're not going to say, okay, well, you're only allowed to have the generic of whatever particular medication. They say that they do the same thing as the brand name, but some people find that they respond better to the brand name of whatever medication. Sometimes it's the fillers in the medication. Maybe it's the placebo effect. I don't know. But people should have the right to choose, even if they want to pay a little more, that they want the brand name instead of the generic. And is that going to completely eliminate this choice? Who knows?
And the question is what does that mean for over-the-counter pharmaceuticals? Like your Advils, your Tylenols, your cough syrups. Is all of that covered? If so, now you're dipping into the profit margins of the Walmarts, of the Rexalls, of the grocery chains. And they already have the grocery chains in and wagging their finger at them about food prices. This is not gonna work. It absolutely will not work. Not in 2 months. This needs to, be tabled as a motion, go to committee, be studied. Like, it's not going to happen. So, back to the whole theory. The NDP are doing okay in polling recently. One poll had them high up as, what was it, Fox, 44 seats?
Yeah, 44 seats, which would be 19 additional compared to what they have right now. And that was the Nanos poll. And Nanos is usually pretty liberal leaning.
So they're riding high. This is actually perfect timing for them. They're riding high. Now, what they can do is say, no, we are fighting for the Canadians that are struggling with cost of living and struggling with their pharmaceuticals. And we will demand no less than perfection from the Liberal government, which the Liberal government cannot deliver.
And then Jagmeet gets to look like the hero, saying to Canadians, look, we broke this covenant with the Liberal government, and I know that everything that they were doing was making you miserable, and we were trying so hard to get this amazing Pharmacare plan put in, and they couldn't do it, so now we're calling an election. Yay us, hooray,
Yeah.
clap, clap, clap.
This has nothing to do with the Conservatives. I'm saving the day. So this is all still unfolding, but I find it very interesting, and Fox finds it very interesting, that almost to a T, this is unfolding almost exactly as we predicted over a month ago. And make no mistake, this has nothing to do with pharmaceuticals. This has nothing to do with anything other than the riding boundaries that are going to change next spring. So get ready, everybody.
Because we think an election is on the way.